Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to take a look at Jupiter in Cancer squaring Neptune in the sign of Aries. This is another major outer planetary configuration that's taking place this week, and it's a really good one to understand the nuances of both historically and in terms of the square that's happening right now. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some tips for tracking the historic cycles of Jupiter and Neptune. I'm going to give you some tips in terms of what to watch for and how to track. And then I'm going to give you the dates of the entirety of the last cycle, as well as the first portions of this cycle. Then what we're going to do tomorrow is isolate Jupiter Neptune in terms of the archetypal configuration itself. These two episodes are therefore designed to help you get the most out of the tracking of this Jupiter Neptune dynamic. And then we can meaningfully place it alongside of the fact that Saturn and Neptune are combining right now, which makes the dynamic between Jupiter and Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune really dynamic and interesting. The best way, in my opinion, to approach that is to break it into parts and then put it all back together. So today, the historic cycles of Jupiter and Neptune, what to watch for, how to track them, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit more about Jupiter and Neptune. And then it's my hope that we can meaningfully put all three together as we go forward and we watch this dance between Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter continue over the next couple of weeks. So anyway, that's the goal for today. And as always, before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. It is my hope that this channel is a home for your daily spiritual practice of astrology. If you watch regularly or you enjoy this channel when you like and you subscribe, it helps us a ton to grow and support this space. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. I'm going to take you over there right now because we are in the final week of enrollment for the Year 1 program. It starts this weekend on the 22nd. It is not too late to join. Click on the first year course under the courses tab to learn more about it. This page tells you everything that you need to know, and it also gives you the registration options at the bottom, including a need-based tuition option that is there for people who are on a fixed or limited income, might need a little bit of help with the exchange rate, or you're on maybe receiving disability, or you're a single parent. Whatever the case might be, please do use that if it will help you to take the program. We want to make sure that no one's priced out of studying something sacred. That's a big part of our vision at Nightlight, is the financial accessibility of our work. On that note, I am also really excited because this weekend we also have an event coming up here in Minneapolis. If you are in the area, come join us for a solstice meditation. If you go to the events page on the website, you will see that under events, click on in-person events. We have a summer solstice gathering this Saturday night from 6 to 8:30 p.m. at the Grapevine Collective at the New City Center in Minneapolis. It's free to join. We just ask that you RSVP so we know how much tea, how many cookies to bring and how much tea to bring with. But this is a time for us to do a little bit of gentle movement, a little period of meditation, a little talk on the solstice, a good time to sort of center yourself and be ritualistic and intentional about one of the more interesting moments of the solar year. At least here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're celebrating that right now. But if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, I hope you're marking your winter solstice with something meaningful as well. So those are the things coming up. Please do check them out. And remember, it's not too late to join the Horary program. I did a demo on that program last week that you could go back and watch in last week's content. So, all right, on that note, let us turn our attention to the real-time clock, and I am going to show you the transit at hand first. So what we are working with today, Wednesday, June 18th, is the applying square between Jupiter in Cancer and Neptune in the sign of Aries. Now, if we follow this transit just a little bit further, oops, I'm going to go by hours here. We'll see that the transit is perfect down to the minute. This is right around 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. Central Time tonight. So that's June 18th. The square between these two planets is historic, which means we can interpret it in a vacuum, sure, and I'll give you those significations and combinations, the what to watch for list tomorrow. Today, what I want to do is teach you how the cycle works, what to watch for cyclically, and the dates of all of the important points of the last cycle, as well as the first few stages of this new cycle. This is our opening square. We're going to start with the conjunction in Pisces in 2022 and bring us through all of the critical moments of this new cycle that began in 22. But I'm also going to take you back to the cycle that began some time ago, which takes us all the way back to 2009. So we're going to go from the cycle that ran from 2009 up to 2022. And I'm going to teach you how to track that. And for some of you, that will be great, fun, optional sort of homework you can do that will also carry over in terms of understanding what to watch for with this current square and the current cycle that we're in. So that's the agenda. So again, tomorrow, Jupiter in Cancer, Neptune in Aries. I'm going to break it down, put it in a kind of archetypal vacuum, spin the jewel, tell you all of the particulars to watch for. And hopefully with this larger cyclical tracking context, you can then get the most out of it. So on that note, let us... Here are the things to watch for within the cycle of these two planets in general. By that, what I mean is whenever these two planets get together throughout all of the parts of their cycle, there are some very broad things that we track and that we can observe over the course of our lives. Remember, I've been talking a lot about Jupiter within the context of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. Jupiter's meaning broadly relates to that word teleology, the purpose or direction for which something is born or designed, like the blueprint of an oak tree that's contained in the acorn. I recommended a book recently that maps all of the history of Jupiter out really nicely by Liz Green that came out recently called By Jove. A lot of people think about Jupiter, they think about abundance and expansion and the bestower of blessings and benefits, and you're going to get a raise, and there's a lot of things that Jupiter can be a very benefic planet and sort of wish granter in some ways, but there's a lot more to Jupiter. And one of the things that Jupiter most importantly represents is the evolution of our felt instinctual sense of faith and direction and purpose. And to some extent, our evolving understanding of purpose, our life philosophy, our beliefs, and the evolution of our understanding, especially to the extent that that understanding informs how we structure portions of our lives that therefore become reflections of our beliefs and our sense of purpose, direction, and faith in our personal lives, but also in a sort of larger macrocosmic sense, our understanding of the purpose of life, the purpose of the universe itself. These are all things we've broken down recently, somewhat recently with the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic. All of these same things still apply for Jupiter and Neptune. Within the Jupiter-Neptune dynamic, cyclically, historically, we are still talking about the evolution of understanding, faith, wisdom, purpose, direction, meaning, the teleology, the felt sense of something's purpose or end that it is designed for. Now, those things are changing and evolving and shifting all of the time because we learn and grow, and the focus of our life changes, especially even within different areas of our life. The purpose and focus changes. Our understanding grows and changes within relationships or parenting or job or health or internally selfhood. There's so many different specific arenas within which our understanding philosophy is unfolding. This becomes really important when tracking the cycles of Jupiter with other outer planets, because each outer planetary cycle with Jupiter reflects a different flavor of that understanding. And often within different whole sign houses throughout the cycle, different areas of life become very targeted and specific. So for whatever I'm about to say today about the cycles of Jupiter and Neptune, I highly recommend that you track out the whole sign house locations of these transits that I'm going to take you through today, because that will always give you topical grounding within your natal chart. This is, of course, assuming a whole sign house paradigm, but you could apply it to whatever house system you use. Now, what to watch for within the Jupiter-Neptune dynamic is really interesting, because all of the same things about faith, direction, purpose, meaning, understanding, philosophy unfold within the Jupiter-Neptune cycle. However, with the combination of Jupiter and Neptune, one of the key things that happens is direction, purpose, faith, meaning are evolving along the lines of what inspires us. That spiritual fire within us that gets passionate and excited and charismatic and emotionally sort of stirred by something that calls to us, like a longing or a fantasy or a dream or a wish, an aspiration, an inspiration. Neptune Jupiter is typically about the way in which we are evolving along the lines of what inspires us, what calls to us, what beckons us. There's a real romantic pulse to the Jupiter Neptune dynamic. The inspiration, the keyword imagination comes to mind for this cycle. So when you track this cycle today, and I give you all the dates to track, think about what was inspiring you, or what new things were calling to you, what new things were exciting you, where were your dreams, your hopes? Those are very Jupiter Neptune like themes to watch for. Number two is the reaching toward ideals. Neptune with Jupiter tends to hold out something like a fantasy or an ideal, something like Eden or paradise. Even if it's within a specific area of our life, it's like an image of how wonderful something could be, or the thing that calls to us as it's like glittery and beautiful and shimmering. Now, sometimes those are mirages, or the reality can't. It's like it overpromises and underdelivers. That's a hallmark of Jupiter Neptune. Nonetheless, the dream, the vision, will still pull us along a life path. And it usually does deliver something of the quality of the wish or hope that we place on things, but there may be projections that have to be pulled back a little bit. That's definitely a part of the Jupiter-Neptune dynamic, which is why we also have Jupiter-Saturn, right? So that cycle has a little bit more of these hard limit checks that come with them. So it's interesting that you put the two together right now. We'll talk about that later. Finally, even though it sounds like that's the job of Jupiter-Saturn, the very fact that Jupiter and Neptune align and realign our hopes, visions, dreams, fantasies, they do so along the same timelines that certain hard realities are being faced, limitations are being dealt with, and maybe even old dreams or wishes are sort of dissolving. That's a natural juxtaposition that's built into Jupiter Neptune that doesn't even necessarily need Saturn to do the reality checking. Neptune has this funny way of giving us Saturnian reality checks simply because the juxtaposition between reality and fantasy with Neptune can be very strong, regardless of Saturn's presence. I think it's not unrelated that when Neptune was discovered, it was discovered in a conjunction with Saturn. It's as though there's something about Neptune that has Saturn sort of baked into it because of the natural juxtaposition between what we hope or wish for and the sort of limits of the world that we live in, within which we hope and desire for things that are sort of otherworldly. So all of that is just to say that even though we have Saturn and Neptune sort of together right now, any stage of the Jupiter-Neptune dynamic can reflect our evolving inspiration, wishes, fantasies, dreams, longings that are informing our sense of purpose and philosophy and meaning in life as it's unfolding. But those can sometimes come along the lines of things like disillusionment or reality checks. I mean, I can't tell you how many Neptune transits where Saturn's nowhere to be found in terms of the major transit picture in a person's chart. We'll show them the limits of their, let's say, their marriage or their job. Their Neptune fills them with a longing for something that looks totally different because they're feeling disillusioned with or bored, or something in their life is feeling sort of dried up comparatively. So that juxtaposition is baked into Neptune, again, regardless of Saturn's presence. Now, with those three things in mind, again, inspiration, imagination, and how those things are informing our sense of purpose and direction, and anchor that, you can think of that very broadly in terms of your whole life, or you can think of that very specifically in terms of the topics of the houses that Jupiter and Neptune are contacting each other in as they work through their cycles. So you can do that tracking on either level, just a reminder, reaching toward what dreams, what ideals, and by contrast, where is the disillusionment or the feeling of limit that usually is a part of or informing the dream, the fantasy, the hope. All right, so on that note, what I want to do next is take you through the last cycle so that you have a full cycle to track in your journal if you choose to. You now know what to look for. And then I'm going to take you through the current cycle so that we can bring this square into the context of the recent cycle that started in 2022. So that's our Okay, so I had to get my screen ready there. We're going to take this back to the start of the last Jupiter Neptune cycle. This takes us back to May of 2009 when Jupiter and Neptune conjoined in the sign of Aquarius. Now, what I'm going to do is show you how you can track this. And I just realized that I have a lot of spirit showing, and I just want to get rid of that really quick. Oh, God. Okay, hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So, Jupiter conjoined Neptune to start the last Jupiter Neptune cycle in May of 2009. This is May 27th, 2009. You can see the two planets exactly conjoined at the 26th degree of Aquarius. Now, in terms of unpacking this cycle, a few tips. Use the whole sign houses if that matters to you. Anchor the cycle in the house that Neptune starts in because it's a slower moving planet. In a sense, it's like the orbital anchor for the cycle. So if it helps you to sort of anchor the evolution of what's inspiring you and tracking that in the whole sign house of Aquarius, that's one way to do it. You can also look at both houses as they are going along through the cycle in terms of the topics, or you can kind of chuck the house topics and just chart the path of inspiration, dreams, aspirations, hopes, wishes, and how they're shaping the plot line of life just overall. You don't even have to use the house locations if you don't want to, so you have options. Anyhow, I'm going to say a few brief things about how I track this in my own chart so that you have a template to work with. Jupiter and Neptune conjoined in May of 2009. They also conjoined in July of 2009. So 2009 really becomes a kind of flashpoint for the start of this new cycle. And it's interesting that the conjunction between these two planets really plays out in several different moments throughout 2009. So here you can see I'm tracking them, and let's see, they conjoin at around the 26th degree again by about July 10th. So in May, late May, and then early July, the two planets are really sort of dancing together during that period of time. Now, if we go forward just a little bit more, we're going to see that by December of 2009, the two planets come together one more time, and they come together now at the 24th degree of Aquarius. So that cycle, now the conjunction has taken place at three separate occasions, spread out pretty much throughout all of 2009, May, July, December. Okay, so that year, with those two planets in my career house, Aquarius is my 10th, what I noticed was that this was the period of time where I got my book deal. I got my book deal during that year. And I was also, during that period of time, I was dating someone who started her own business and was not only teaching me how to start a business, but really encouraging me to consider using the publicity and the book launch, the launch of my book, to start my own career. I was studying astrology, but did not yet have the confidence to start a career, even though someone in my life who was a model for starting their own business, which was doing very well, they started their own LLC, and they were teaching classes on nutrition and really sort of gave me a template for what I could do and were encouraging me to do my own thing with astrology, but I didn't quite yet have the confidence. But a dream and a vision was certainly taking place. It was all rooted in the publication of my book about ayahuasca and this growing desire to kind of go in my own direction professionally, with the knowledge that I had a book that would be coming out in 2010, that there would be a publicity and book tour, radio spots, and that it might make for a good time to start something of my own professionally. So between the May, July, and December conjunctions, I was getting my book deal and watching the person I was dating at the time start their own company, which was rooted in teaching and like a teaching platform and so forth. So that was major period of inspiration that would seed really the beginning of my career as an astrologer. Fascinating, right? So that was in my 10th house, makes sense. But you can track those wherever Aquarius lands in your chart. What was the inspiration? What was the seeding of a new vision? What were your hopes and wishes? What was the ideal image that was somehow fueling the development of your life story? I think it can be a really useful thing to spend some time thinking about the arc of that year, in this case, 2009. The next thing that happens after the two planets separate, Jupiter being the faster moving planet who is going to do the separating, is the two planets will reach their opening sextile. This is a lot like a lunar cycle, right? Where you have the sun moving slower, the moon moving faster, and hitting aspects to the sun as it moves out in front of the sun in a lunar cycle. So when we look at the sextile from these two planets, the first sextile really between these two planets occurs in June of 2011. We see a sextile from Taurus to Neptune, Jupiter in Taurus and Neptune in Pisces. So the sextile is from Taurus to Pisces. Now, under a sextile, typically what's happening is a next stage of unfolding. A critical form of development is happening, and one that often includes the harmonization of the original dreams, aspirations, and hopes with material or resources or developments or people that are coming together to aid and support the development of some of those wishes and dreams and hopes. That's the most generous interpretation you could say of a sextile within this cycle, the opening sextile, which is about building the dream. So the two planets come into sextile in June of 2011. This was my first date with my wife, Ashley. I had broken up with the person that I had been dating during the opening part of the cycle. I had started my own business with their support. I see this person as divinely placed in my life and consider them still someone that I care about as another human being very deeply, because I think we both probably played important roles in each other's lives. Certainly the seeding of that cycle had a lot to do with the inspiration of starting my own business, right? And I had a template and someone who kind of showed me the ropes. Jupiter and Neptune getting together here in June, I had just a month ago, prior to this, done a retreat where I taught astrology at a yoga retreat that my wife was leading. She invited me to come along after having had a reading with me. And so I went and collaborated and worked with her. And then we went out essentially for dinner for the first time that month. And the idea of coming together and bringing our work together from that retreat was talked about. What else could we do? So just a resource, right? Coming together. Now, by the end of 2011, we started a yoga studio together in a home with herbs, yoga, and astrology as our offering, that we brought those things together. But this was the first time that we met to discuss, to start collaborating, you might say. So that was June of 2011. Now, for you guys, track that. What was happening? And you could be a little generous with the swath of time you use. Is it just before June of 2011? Is it later in the summer? What happens from the meeting of these two planets in June throughout the rest of 2011? Be creative. Don't be super limited and strict with the way that you look at it, but also be honest. What was the line of inspiration? What was harmonizing to build and develop dreams, wishes, aspirations that had their roots in that 2009 moment? All right, moving forward, we go to June of 2012 to see the first quarter square. Now, the square between these two planets is a moment where it's a little bit of a crucible. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of effort. There are some maybe contrasting or conflicting ideals, or even divergent opinions about how to best achieve the dreams, the desires, the goals, or maybe even a period of adjustment of expectations, a little bit of a reality check, but hopefully not a dream killer, right? So June of 2012, we see the square from Gemini to Pisces. What is interesting is that during this period of time, this is now 11th house to 2nd house in my chart. This is the period of time in which I encouraged Ashley to develop and launch her own herbal courses because she was teaching herbs a lot. I said, why don't you just formalize some of the classes you teach into a kind of online training program? And then we also launched a yoga teacher training program. And then I formalized a few more courses at Nightlight. That all happened in June of 2012. So at this time, it was a period of enormous work and development around some of the original career aspirations. Again, locating the start of the cycle in my 10th house. But this had to do with building an online training platform for all of our courses, building curriculum for yoga teacher training programs, and so on. During this time, this was a period of tremendous work and development relative to our dreams and goals. So you can see it again. Now, when you're tracking this, look at what was the tension, what was the stress, what was the work, what kind of crossroads were you at with respect to the building and developing of aspirations, hopes, wishes, dreams. Think about it like that. Next, we go to July of 2013. Now, I'm going to take this forward here by a year, and I want to show you what's happening then. In July of 2013, we have a grand water trine, or a grand water trine. There might have been one. We have a water trine, I should say. And the water trine is between Jupiter in Cancer and Neptune in Pisces. That is taking place in July of 2013. This is the trine. Now, like the sextile, but after the square, we're back to a period of rapid growth, development, harmonization, and really building and developing things. So what happened during this time was we were coming up against the end of our lease at the place that we had our yoga studio. It was a home that we rented that they were generous enough to allow us to have a home-based yoga studio. We started realizing that we probably wanted to get married. We were pretty close to deciding that we were on the marriage path and that we needed to have a designated place for the yoga studio, for the herbs, the astrology, and a separate place for home because we were starting to think very seriously about getting married and having a family together. And so the natural desire to kind of differentiate our home and living space from the yoga studio space occurred. And this summer, we signed a lease at a yoga studio that was a new space, and we rented a house that was our own space. And that divergence of home, family life, and professional life occurred very naturally, very seamlessly. We were very excited about it. And by the end of 2013, in the wake of that decision, we were engaged to be married, and we had a separate yoga studio space. But during this time, we also we greatly developed what was really a very homey yoga studio vibe, but in a new location, and then kind of separated some things out. Now, that trine from Cancer to Pisces in July of 2013, a broad way of thinking about it as you're tracking it is just what was in the process of developing, building momentum, and also from the square, maybe what had differentiated. That's another way of thinking about the trine coming off from the square. What's integrating after a differentiation period? So that busy work period of the square, for example, was a big part of what led us to saying we need a separate place for home, family, and a separate place for work. And that began a psychic differentiation process as well as a literal one. And this was the integration that came after. So what was flowing together? What elements of life were conspiring to support the original seeding of the dreams, the visions, the hopes that began back in 2009? Finally, we get to the full moon of the cycle, which was in 2015. In 2015, it was September, excuse me. Here we go. So September, you can see now that Jupiter in Virgo is opposed to Neptune in Pisces. Now, when an opposition comes along, what you are generally tracking is sort of like the full moon of the cycle. Everything that the seeding of the cycle began with is now reaching its blossom on the tree. There is also sometimes a very clear polarization between things that are taking place. That is because as the cycle evolves and you reach the full moon, you are now going to begin a process of sloughing off that vision, realizing its fruits, and beginning the seeding of new and different visions with the next cycle. So this is a point of departure from an old way, and that will a full moon is of the cycle, which will often bring things to a sense of resolution, completion, a fullness, and a blossoming. But then the polarization can begin a process of further differentiation that eventually leads to the sloughing off of this vision and the creation of a new one. So 2015, September, we moved, we bought our first home, we were married. Ashley was pregnant and giving birth in December. And this was the point at which really the blossom of we had a second new yoga studio that we had that we were in the process of moving into by the early part of 2016. So we were searching for a new yoga studio that could accommodate the growth that we had experienced as a studio. And we were married and had our first child on the way. And so the further differentiation between home and family and our sort of married couple life and the business that we had together was further differentiating. The polarization was growing stronger because we're about to have a child, and you know what happens. You throw kids in the mix, everything gets really busy. And then there was a fullness. We were at the peak of our growth as a yoga studio community, such that we had to get a bigger studio, which took place by the end of 2015, very early part of 2016. So that's the full moon in this cycle for me. When you're tracking it, what I want you to think about is what was reaching a point of sort of maximal tension, expression, realization, fullness, and what polarizations were starting to announce themselves that are really the beginning of the end of the cycle. We still have a whole waning part of the cycle to go through, but this says now we're waning. Now from this point forward, we're ending a cycle. We're in the process of realizing its fruits and then gradually releasing the cycle itself. So now we turn to the waning side. December of 2017, we go through the waning part of the cycle. I'm going to take you up to that time. So in December of 2017, we have a disseminating trine between Jupiter in Scorpio and Neptune in Pisces. You can still anchor things in that whole sign house of Pisces if you've been doing that as you've gone along here, but you can also take a close look at Jupiter in Scorpio. So as this trine was coming through, we had literally just found out this month that Ashley was pregnant with our second daughter, who would be born in the summer of 2018. So as this trine happened, and this is happening between my 11th house community and my 7th house of marriage, Ashley is starting to realize that she is probably going to need to pull back her work because she wants more time for motherhood. And so she's starting around this time when she found out she was pregnant, a whole conversation begins about what does our work look like given the growth and expansion of our family. And this was a time of just shifting views and shifting hopes and dreams and wishes and what's motivating us and things like that. So the dream is changing. We started handing the duties and responsibilities over to staff for management so that we could have more time for parenting, right? So it was a natural shift that was happening. And that trine also coincided for me with the beginning of my involvement in the Bhakti yoga world. And my wife's too, to a certain extent. She was never quite as into it as I was, but we were sharing that interest to a certain extent. So that trine also came in as I was getting deeper and deeper into Bhakti yoga. I think that's interesting because it was kind of a very mystical, charismatic, sort of faith-based community that was playing a strong role in my life at the time. May of 2018, the trine recurs. This is happening for me just after I came back from India for the first time, which I think is really interesting, and just prior to the birth of our second daughter. But this trine occurs between the two planets in May of 2018, so you can further track the development along these lines. So basic same themes for me. And then in August of 2018, the final trine between the two planets occurs. And you can essentially see that taking place right here. Again, this is August of 2018. It's the final trine between the two planets. This is a disseminating trine. Well, it's a lot of the fruits of the cycle being realized as you're also really starting to the process of taking everything the cycle gave and beginning to let it go. It was around this time that Ashley had just given birth to our second daughter. It was very clear that things were not going to go on as normal because parenting and family life was becoming so much more a part of our own needs and desires and wishes and aspirations. Like it takes a lot, so you can't do both at the same level or you'll be burnt out, right? So these kinds of realizations were a really beautiful part of the trine and just reprioritizing things. Again, hiring more help at the studio was a big part of this period. What was happening for you during all of these trines? December 2017, May 2018, August 2018. It's a process of realizing the fruits of the cycle and then maybe starting to reorient and shift visions or views as the cycle is starting to wane. Then we get to January of 19. In January of 2019, here we go. Whoops, May to I'll go back to January. We have the square between Jupiter in Sagittarius and Neptune in the sign of Pisces. This square recurs also in June of 2019. So January 2019, and then we take it forward to June, and we can see the square is there again. Those two squares from January of 2019 to June of 2019 are now really providing the crossroads of our faith, vision, imagination, inspiration, hope, longing that will be about the relinquishment of the old ideal and the seeding of the new cycle. This is the last quarter square, like a moon cycle. So very important kind of crossroads. It was during this period that we decided to close the yoga studio and shift to entirely online offerings, which is interesting because the first quarter square of the cycle was when we developed those offerings and started also the process of diverging home and family from work. Under the last quarter of the cycle, the studio has reached a flourishing peak, but home and family and the precedent of those concerns has moved us to a space of reorienting our lives to only feature the online training programs that we offered and to close down the brick and mortar space and to do that so that we could accommodate a vision of family and home that really wasn't going to be possible trying to do both just because of how involved it was. So some people maybe could do it. We just wasn't our priority, So now for you, what are you doing between January and June of 2019? What crossroads are you at? How is the faith and vision changing, releasing? What are you letting go of that because of a new vision that's gradually being seeded in? This last quarter is like a moment of harvest and release. So then we move to February of 2020. This is the sextile that features a fallen Jupiter in Capricorn, Saturn's sign. At the very kind of dark point of a cycle, one of the things that I would really emphasize would be disillusionment. This is a place where faith, vision, hope, inspiration are changing, continuing to change as the general cycle of waning and releasing is happening on this half of the Jupiter-Neptune cycle. But with a fall in Jupiter, it's also about disappointments or disillusionments, you could say, things that are falling apart that are also harmoniously happening as a new vision is coming in. So what was happening at this time was as these two planets were sextile to one another, obviously COVID was about to happen. But for us, we had closed the studio and we were starting to realize that for the vision of home and family life that we wanted, Maryland itself, where we were living, was not likely to be a fit. This was also due in part to the fact that in these months just following this sextile, My wife's family, her parents went through a divorce, which largely left us without a strong family connection. And then the natural thing that happened under the next part of the sextile in July took place. So this sextile, this kind of dissolving sextile with a fallen Jupiter and Saturn sign, continues in July of 2020. So here in July of 2020, you see the two planets sextile again. This is the very dark part of their cycle, you could say. So it's about dreams, visions, wishes, but specifically as the very last part of a cycle is coming forth, and we got a fall in Jupiter. So by July of 2020, her parents were divorced and the studio was closed. We were all online. And so we decided that we were going to move home to Minnesota, which is home for both of us. Ashley has a lot of family here. I have a lot of connections and roots here. And so this was really the orientation of the family had come in even more strongly by the end of the cycle, you know? So this is a moment of letting go of not only the yoga studio, but then Maryland itself and moving back to Minnesota. I find that just super, super fascinating. Finally, there was one more sextile in October of 2020. And that sextile, again, a disseminating, dissolving sextile. This sextile coincided with having just moved to Minnesota between, what was it, July? We moved in late August. So the final sextile took place as we were getting settled into Minnesota. And at that time, that was also the time that Ashley decided to pull back completely from teaching for a little bit. She just wanted a break. So then I took on the full-time, provider responsibilities for a little bit. Now, that's the entirety of the last cycle. I think it is absolutely fantastic if you can take some time to track that out. Watch the ebb and flow of your wishes and your dreams and your hopes and how they're shaping the storyline. What did you want? What did you desire? What was the amazing fantasy guiding your path? And it worked out or not, a lot of times they don't work out exactly as we think they will, but we are dreamers, especially people who are into astrology, right? Now, let's start the news cycle. This new cycle that we are in is still really, really young and new. Let's take a look at April of 2022. Now we can track the cycle that we are in the midst of. And so we're going to see that it is right here in April of 2022, the two planets conjoined in Pisces. So their seeding took place in April of 2022. Now, that was still, pretty recent. Like most of us should, I think, be able to track that with some ease. One of the things that I noticed when I went back and looked at that was that it was that very month that I made a decision to pull out of a Bhakti Yoga community project because I was really starting to question whether or not the Bhakti Yoga faith tradition and religious community was the right fit for me. And so that month, rather than commit to a community-based sort of project that I was going to be a part of, I pulled out of it. I had a different idea for building community here in Minnesota and through Nightlight and through what we were doing, kind of a different direction. I think it's really interesting because it just shows me that sometimes the conjunctions don't necessarily show you exactly what the dream or vision is, but they give you at the very least a starting point. So that month, I quite literally decided I'm not going to continue on this Bhakti Yoga path. Well, within 6 months, I had left the Bhakti Yoga world entirely. There's a conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune in my 11th house that's starting to give me the feeling, idea of different type of community, different type of religious, spiritual community that's not in alignment with the Bhakti Yoga world I had been in. Simple. What was happening for you in the spring of 2022, over the summer of 2022? The square that we're going through now is connected to that starting point. Let's move forward to the sextile. So the sextile, the opening sextile, again, a harmonization starts taking place. in 2024. This is May of 2024 that we're going to see the two planets come together in a sextile. Here in Taurus and in Pisces. Remember, what I find so interesting about, remember, if I go back to the last cycle, when these two planets met in their sextile, they were in the same signs. And this is when, I mentioned you guys, I met my wife. This opening period last May, interestingly, coincided with the, this was Ashley's return to work. So she began teaching her herbal courses again for the first time since she had left, which was under the closing sextile. So under the closing sextile, the previous cycle, she took a break from teaching to just focus on being a mom. Under the opening sextile of the new cycle, she returned to work. Isn't that so interesting? I just think it's fascinating. It was around this time that I also, through attendance of Quaker meetings and Al-Anon and stuff like that, began formulating the some of the vision for quiet meditation group meetups, which, not surprisingly, this month under the square, I plan to be fulfilling and opening. So this was also the period of time where I started conceptualizing a new kind of community space that I could hold outside of my work for spiritual community here in Minneapolis and also online and stuff like that. So I thought that was really kind of cool. But again, the question that we ask ourselves under a sextile is, what new dream vision that kind of got started in the spring, summer of 22 is now formulating, building resources, finding harmony, and kind of starting to build something. That takes us up to this current square. The current square is thus the moment of energy and initiation and work. Remember, in the first quarter square of the last cycle, for example, we were building all of this curriculum, developing all these programs that would become mainstays for the rest of the cycle and are still here today. The vision now that began in 2022 requires effort and work and pouring ourselves into something. So that square is another crossroads of vision, dream, aspiration, hope that will require the energizing action and effort of a first quarter square. So look at that right now. Now, it's interesting that Saturn's in the mix because that reality check principle is very strong within this particular Jupiter-Neptune dynamic. What is and isn't possible? What is the realistic fulfillment of dreams, hopes, and wishes might be a little stronger due to Saturn's presence, but there it is. And then just to play this out so you can see where it's going, the next contact between these two planets will then be when Jupiter gets into Leo, and this is 2026 in July. In July, the two planets will trine one another about a year from right now. So we'll go from square and building to integrating, harmonizing after the differentiation occurs. Really, really cool way of tracking cycles. What to watch for, again, along these lines: inspiration, imagination, reaching toward ideals and dreams, alongside of the natural way in which we can only do so much in this world of impermanence and change and flux. Our expectations and our hopes and our wishes have to come into alignment with what is actually possible. That's always part of a Neptune conversation. But nonetheless, dreaming, wishing, hoping is part of what makes our lives beautiful and human. And if we don't do so, I don't know how happy we are if we don't ever do so, just because who knows if it'll work out, or hasn't worked out before. There's lots of things, if I look along the last timeline, that didn't work out, that were part of the dream and vision, but there were so many things that did. And if you follow the path, you also realize there's less that I have to control than I typically think there is. If I show up, if I do my best, if I follow the calling, life has a natural way of providing feedback and support and context that moves the story along. So on that note, come study with us. I have an informational video tagged on after you sign off here about the Year 1 program. It starts this weekend. You only have a few days left to register. If you like this kind of stuff, if you think that you're someone who could bring this love of astrology into other people's lives, you probably can. You might even be underestimating your capacity to do so. Or if you just want to study this and get become more of your own astrologer. I think the program is ideal for people on either trajectory. So check it out. I hope to see you in class soon. And I hope more than anything, this was useful for you. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It is our first-year course in Hellenistic astrology that begins at the end of June. June 22nd is our starting date. I'm going to take you over to the course page to tell you more about the program and what you will learn while you are in it. So here we go over to the Nightlight Astrology website. You can find this at nightlightastrology.com. Click on the courses tab, go to the first year course. Now this program is ideal for people who maybe have a little bit of background already in astrology. Maybe you've done some studying on your own independently, taken some courses or webinars and workshops, but you're looking to deepen your understanding of astrology. And maybe Hellenistic astrology in particular has been calling to you. I'll tell you more about what Hellenistic astrology is in a minute, but on the first year course page, you're going to find everything that the course includes. I want to make the structure of the course clear first, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you 5 reasons that I think anyone might have for studying astrology, and you can see if you check any of those boxes. First of all, there are 30 classes on the year. It's just a little under a year-long program with 30 webinars. Every webinar is 2 to 3 hours long, including a lively Q&A and conversational section after we finished our lesson for the day. Each of those lessons I lead personally through live webinars, so you can attend those live. If you want to follow along at your own pace in your own time, on your own schedule, you can always look at the recordings and take those in. And I'm going to show you what the class page looks like so you can see how you can interact with the course as uniquely and creatively as you want to. But you can either attend the live webinars or listen to the recordings or audio or video. In between major units of study within those 30 classes, we have separate classes outside of the 30 classes that are essentially tutoring sessions led by our staff, our course directors. We have 3 of them for our first year program, 3 tutors that help me guide every single class you're in and lead study sessions, and are also staffing an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions, look at charts, practice what you're learning with all of your classmates and with tutors there to help you. They'll always answer questions within a business day. So it's a really well-staffed, well-structured program. In between those major units of study and the breakout sessions, we also have guest speakers that come in throughout the year that you get free access to. The recordings are archived for you in your class folders. So you're getting people within our curriculum. You're also getting to visit with some astrologers who are outside of the Nightlight School, but we really admire their work, and so we bring them in. You also have a ton of bonus material. With every lesson, we have recommended quizzes, study guides, optional reading. And that allows people who are really, really, intense, deep, like studious types to go as far as you want to with the material, while other people who are maybe, content to take things in at, just kind of taking in the classes, that's there for you too. So you can kind of go as deeply as you want to. The class, as the year goes on, goes through major units of study in ancient Hellenistic astrology. So if you're not familiar with ancient Hellenistic astrology, this is the earliest form of horoscopic astrology. This is where the astrology that you've probably learned today comes from originally. And that makes some of its features unique. Like, for example, ancient astrologers utilized whole sign houses. We study why they used whole sign houses, how they used them, and we study the why behind really everything: houses, signs, planets, aspects, dignities, essential and accidental dignities, delineation approaches. How do you read and predict within a natal chart? All of those theoretical areas of astrology we not only learn how to do, but we learn the why behind it. And this is what I think people find most empowering about the course, is that ancient astrology really helps to give you the rationale for everything so that you have the insight available to go off script. What I mean by that is, like, let's say you're learning about a sign, Aries or Taurus or a Gemini, something like that. Ancient astrology won't just give you a list of the adjectives or keywords or descriptions of, say, a sign or a planet. It will give you an underlying philosophical explanation that then allows you to extrapolate from it the kinds of lists that you read in textbooks.
which means you'll have an understanding of why everything on a list in a textbook is there in the first place. And you'll also have the insight and creativity available to add things to the list that are a part of your own unique intuition and contribution to astrology. And this is what ancient astrologers wanted students of astrology to learn, the why behind everything. So this is a class where even though you're seeing things like planet signs, houses, dignities, aspects, and you're like, oh, I've already learned about those things. Not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology. I don't mean to sound condescending, but like truly, most people's experience coming through this program is, wow, I had no idea all that I didn't know about the roots of everything that I've understood thus far about astrology. So it really is about digging into the philosophical core of why we do everything. And then you have greater intuitive and creative capacity as an astrological craftsman or craftswoman. So anyway, that's a brief explanation of why I think Hellenistic astrology is important. Not to mention that ancient astrology was really focused on our ability to accurately describe and predict things in the realm of karma, fate, and destiny, whereas modern astrology's hallmark and strength is psychological depth. And so when you put the two together in our program, which is why it's called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, I think you have something really special. So on that note, you can see everything that we cover here. So there's a video with some of our alumni you can watch. Everything is there on the page. Now, there are 5 reasons that I want to touch on briefly before I tell you about your payment options and need-based tuition. These are 5 reasons to study astrology that if you mark any of these boxes, especially if you mark several of them, then I think it's a good indication that you might be ideal for this program, might be an ideal fit. So the first one is if you find that astrology has become a part of your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly spiritual practice, it is a part of how you lead an inner life, then there is nothing more empowering than deepening your connection to that language, because that puts you more in the driver's seat. It's always good to have astrologers that you rely on, teachers that you listen to, get a little objective perspective, especially when you're looking at your own chart through a reading. But there's really nothing more empowering than learning to speak the language at a deeper level for yourself. And if that calls to you, if you want to understand things and be able to speak more confidently and clearly about this sacred language that you love, and this is a great reason to take a structured program. Number 2 is that you feel called to read charts for people. Look, not everyone who takes our programs is on a professional track, but we have 4 years worth of professional training programs at Nightlight that will prepare you to read professionally for others if that's the path that you're on. Maybe you don't even know if you're on that path. That's fine too. Many people take our programs just for the sake of their own personal enrichment, and again, to be kind of more in the driver's seat with respect to your astrological journey. You have more of an understanding. You can be more confident in reading symbols and experiencing transits with your own understanding that you've cultivated. But sometimes people want to read for other people. This will definitely set you up to do that. We have a certification track where you can take exams at the end of every year. They're optional. You don't have to if you're not on that level of interest. Number 3, you have done a lot of self-study. You've heard things from here and there, but you're looking to bring it all together. It is overwhelming to study astrology on your own. So if you want organization, structure, and coherence, what you're getting in this program is going on 15 years of training astrologers, 15 years of developing curriculum that has in mind the overwhelm that many people experience. And this program is structured year 1, year 2, year 3, however far you want to go with our curriculum, to give you an organized, structured, coherent way of understanding the history and language of astrology from both ancient times to modern times in all of the vastness that the field includes. And also, as we go, we want to give you the confidence that you are a part now of an astrological lineage. Astrology has always been practitioner-based. Coming through Nightlight, you are going to have the opportunity to feel aligned with a lineage. If you like my work, if you feel aligned with the way I speak the language, then this might be a good reason to come study with us. Now, if you're seeking the why behind things, if you're like, yeah, that's interesting, I get it, I understand, but why? Why signs? What's the difference between a sign and a house? Why do they ever come up with a sign and a house? What's the distinction philosophically? Why does Mars represent this? Why does Mars in this sign represent that? If you are someone who feels empowered by understanding the why behind things, you are going to love this program, because that's how I am as a teacher. That's how I am as a person. And that's what this program is really all about. Number 5, you are looking for astrological community. Look, I think Nightlight is unique in terms of the kind of warmth, acceptance, safety, and inclusiveness that our community includes intellectually, spiritually. We are really pride ourselves on being a peaceful kind of family. I'm a Cancer, right? So it's kind of a family-oriented environment. So anyway, I will end it there. If you check any of those boxes, you may want to consider studying with us. Now, I'm going to take you over to two things. I want to show you the dashboard. So here is the Thinkific page. You're going to join this. And on your dashboard, you're going to find any courses that you've enrolled in at Nightlight, and there are many, so you may end up in being involved in multiple courses, and you'll find that they're all there on your dashboard. Click on one of them, and it will take you in. You're going to find that on the left-hand side, there's orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar, all the technical stuff you need to know when you join the course. And then you're going to find that there's, when you go through the lessons, that the lesson includes the video, the audio, the slides, the transcripts, the Q&A box text if you couldn't make it live and see what people were talking about, flashcards, homework, a bonus PDF with all sorts of additional recommended reading, bonus videos, additional video links for bonus material. So every single time that you want to visit something within the course, everything is nicely organized. So you can see here, I'm going to pause this before it starts going, but you can embed the video right there. It's embedded and you can watch it. And then if you wanted to, you could also, right here, you could also download the video and watch it on your own device. And that's same for the audio as well. And then as you go, you'll see all of the lessons are laid out. The study sessions are also recorded if you can't make those live. So everything is nicely arranged on the website for you. And that makes it a course that if you wanted to take 3 years to accomplish, you could take 3 years to accomplish. If you want to take it for the sake of getting certified, you have the full year plus an additional year to take the exam. So, 2 years total that we give people if you're on a professional track. But most people complete the program in a year. And a lot of people, over 50% of our students go on to our year 2 and then our year 3 and horary programs as well. Now, final thing I'm going to show you is right here. You're going to find here is the enrollment options at the bottom of the first year course page. Again, this is at nightlightastrology.com, and you're going to click on the first year course, go to the bottom. The early bird payment saves you several $100s off the cost of the course. That's available till May 15th. Early bird installment plan saves you on the installment plan, regular cost of the course. That's also only available until May 15th. And then need-based tuition. All of our programs include a need-based option where we give you a sliding scale and we say you pick your monthly tuition number within this sliding scale, which is greatly reduced off the normal tuition price. That is for people who are on a fixed or limited income, receiving disabilities, single mom, whatever the case might be. We want to make sure that nobody's priced out of studying astrology. So you don't have to feel any shame. If that is you, if you need help, if you want to take this, but you need to make it work within a tight budget, we get it. Times are tough right now. We don't think people should be priced out of studying a sacred subject like astrology. So we've been offering need-based pricing for 15 years. Nightlight is a donation-based school. It started that way. We have a sliding scale, so it's kind of like donation. You get to choose your rate anyhow. So if that's something that will help you, please use it. Thank you for listening to this. I hope it gave you a really deep and comprehensive introduction to what the course is all about and why you might find it exciting to come study with us starting at the end of June. So any questions you have about the program as you're visiting the course, email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. We'll be glad to talk about anything that you have questions about. We are here and we have a wonderful staff of people at Nightlight who will be a part of your learning experience and are all glad to help you. All right, that's it. We'll see you again later. Bye.